pṛthag na sidhyatīty evaṃ saha-bhāvaṃ vikāṅkṣasi saha-bhāva-prasiddhy-arthaṃ pṛthaktvaṃ bhūya icchasi.
pṛthag na sidhyatīty evaṃ saha-bhāvaṃ vikāṅkṣasi saha-bhāva-prasiddhy-arthaṃ pṛthaktvaṃ bhūya icchasi. MMK chapter 6 verse 8. Thinking that it is not established separately, you are groping for coexistence. With the aim of substantiating coexistence, you are redoubling effort in pursuit of separateness. So the problem, I think, is in the opponent's conception of coexistence as a thing to be established, siddha, or to be substantiated, prasiddha. I think it means the same, but prasiddha has got the prefix pra for emphasis, or sometimes just to add an extra syllable for the meter. But I've translated prasiddha as substantiated and siddha as established. And so again, I think the opponent is being criticised not because of his effort to see the horse manure and the strawberries as coexisting, because that's the right direction, it's going in the right direction. He's been criticised for failing to make the step back from conventional truth to the ultimate truth, in which there is no horse manure or no strawberries as separately existing things. So this is what exactly, it explains exactly the problem I had with Nishijima Sensei. Because if you try to teach the Buddha's teaching only on the basis of conventional truth, you get end gaining, and with end gaining, as is well understood in Alexander work, you get the law of unintended consequences. So the most clear example, which for me was the tell that the whole thing was built on sand, was the thing of right posture. If you have a non-empty conception of right posture, then right posture is a thing that can be groped for. It can be substantiated, it can be established. So you establish right posture by doing this, that and the other. Something you can definitely do, you see. Pull the chin in to get the neck bone straight, etc, etc, etc. It's all horseshit. Okay, so the challenge is to make strawberries out of that large amount of horseshit, which thanks to the efforts of Japanese Zen masters is piling up in San Francisco, in Zen dojos throughout France and Germany, Australia. There's so much horseshit in the world, so much Zen horseshit. So that the task is to make good use of that horseshit. And the way that's done, in the first instance, like Thich Nhat Hanh, no horseshit, no strawberries, no mud, no lotus. The first step is what he's suggesting here. The first step is make it clear that that's horseshit, and out of that horseshit, good things can grow. But then the ultimate step is to clarify there never was any horseshit as a thing unto itself, and nor are lotuses or strawberries things unto themselves. They're empty dharmas. But what the opponent is doing, he's first of all, he says you are groping for coexistence. Saha-bhāvaṃ, accusative, vikāṅkṣasi, second person singular, or vikāṅk, and kaṅkṣ means long for, wish for. Vikāṅkṣ long for or strive to obtain. So groping, you are groping for coexistence. Thinking, that's included in the word evaṃ. So evaṃ, is like quotation marks, and evaṃ means like that, thus. So literally, pṛthag na sidhyatīty. Sidhyatīty is the same as siddha and prasiddha, established and substantiated. Sidhyatīty, it is established. So in the opponent's lexicon, establishment is the thing. You want to establish something as real. Right posture, establish right posture. Sit in what is established as the right posture. This is the real sitting. Pull your chin in, make the neck bone straight, spine straight vertically. That's establishment of the right posture. And that's how the Zen realist opponent thinks. There are real things, so you've got to establish the right sitting posture as a real thing. And na sidhyatīty, so it is not established, pṛthag, separately. So again, let's think of sitting posture. The Zen realist opponent, what does he say about right sitting posture? Oh, well, it's very important that you have a zafu, and you want to get the zafu to, this is what people talk about, an absolute millimetre. You've got to get exactly the right size zafu. It's like in Alexander work, people talk about ergonomics, spend a fortune on designing the ideal shape of seat. And Alexander famously used to say that you could sit on a soapbox if you're using yourself well. See, it's not about the equipment, it's not about the height of the zafu. It's how deep is your understanding of what the Buddha taught? How deep is your understanding of what Alexander taught? If you really understand, you needn't worry so much about the height of the zafu. But thinking that it is not established separately, okay, so food is super important for a Zazen practitioner, You've got to be macrobiotic and chew your rice 150 times before you swallow it, and, because to establish the right sitting posture, the right sitting posture doesn't exist as a thing unto itself. It coexists with good food and, what else? Have to study Shobogenzo with the right understanding, and so it's not untrue to say those things, but the problem again is it's in the opponent's conception of to be established. He understands that where things are separate, then there isn't coexistence. So thinking that it is not established separately, you, the opponents, are groping for coexistence. It's like the problem is his non-empty conception of coexistence. It's the failure to understand that no mud, no lotus not only means the mud and the lotus are relative to each other, it means the ultimate step is there is no mud and there is no lotus. So there is no right posture. There is no non-empty conception that's going to help you sit in the right posture. And there's no non-empty conception that's going to help you ultimately let the back lengthen and widen. The back lengthens and widens when you let go of all non-empty conceptions. So again, to understand this verse, we've got to understand the first verse, we've got to understand the last verse of MMK. Sarva-drishti prahanaya, in the direction of abandoning all views. And I've told this story before, but once I was watching Nellie Ben-Or work on my wife, she used to give what we call a turn in Alexander work, a mini lesson to my wife and then me, or me and then my wife, and then we'd put hands on each other when she got us, the directions working in us, letting the neck be free to let the head go forward and up, etc. When she got us going up, in short, we would put hands on each other and do Alexander work like that, with Nellie, her hands on the hands of whoever was playing the teacher's role, to give us some sense of what it was like to work with a student with good direction, put it that way. And good direction means keeping oneself lengthening and widening, keeping oneself going up, not pulling the head back and down. So once when Nellie was, I was sitting in front of Nellie and my wife, watching Nellie work, and I forget what question I asked Nellie, but she responded by saying, well, really, it has to do with abandoning all views. I think I said something like, the way you're describing it there, Nellie, it's about letting go of a view. And then Nellie sort of stopped briefly and said, well, really, it has to do with letting go of all views. And shortly after that, I think it was when Mike Latchford published his translation of MMK in the early 2000s, and on the back cover he'd done his rendering of the final verse of MMK. Needless to say, he'd made a pig's ear of it because he didn't understand that prahanaya is dative, which means in the direction of abandoning all views, towards abandoning all views, not as the abandoning of all views, but in that direction, which is so important. It's saying what the right direction is. So again, Mike wouldn't have understood it because Nishijima Sensei didn't understand it. He didn't the reason I understand it is not because I worked it out for myself, it's because Alexander clarified it more than 100 years ago. There's no such thing as a right position. There's no such thing as a right posture, but there is a right direction. And that direction is towards the abandoning of all views. So Alexander teachers were onto this quite independently of the Buddha's teaching. That is a very empty teaching. There is no right position, but there is a right direction. So, though, again, there's no dividing line. There is no dividing line between true Buddhism and non-Buddhism. But there is a step from conventional truth to ultimate truth. And again, in this verse, as I read it, Nāgārjuna is telling the realist, the Zen realist opponent, thinking that it is not established separately, you are groping for coexistence. So the opponent somehow understands the importance of not seeing the horse manure and the strawberries, the mud and the lotus, not seeing them separately. In the same way that the scientist understands relativity, everything's connected. But what Nāgārjuna is saying, no, everything is not connected. For A and B to be connected, A and B have to exist separately. So where A is empty and B is empty, you can't speak about A and B being connected. This is a principle that comes time and time again in MMK. So as we go through it, that'll become more and more clear. Pṛthag sidhyatīty evaṃ, saha-bhāvaṃ vikāṅkṣasi. Thinking that, evaṃ, it is not established, na sidhyatīty, separately, pṛthag. So sidhyatīty and iti and evaṃ with sandhi go to sidhyatīty evaṃ, pṛthag sidhyatīty evaṃ, thinking that it is not established separately. You are groping vikāṅkṣasi for coexistence, saha-bhāvaṃ, accusative. In the second line, saha-bhāva-prasiddhy-arthaṃ, pṛthaktvaṃ, bhūya, icchasi. With the aim of substantiating coexistence, you are redoubling effort in pursuit of separateness. So, with the aim of arthaṃ, at the end of a compound. Arthaṃ means with such and such an aim in view. substantiating, prasiddhi, and again with Sandhi, prasiddhi-arthaṃ goes to prasidhyarthaṃ, coexistence, saha-bhāvaṃ. So that the third para is one long compound, saha-bhāva-prasiddhy-arthaṃ, with the aim of substantiating coexistence. See, the opponent wants to make coexistence into a thing. He understands it's important that the horse manure and the strawberries are coexisting, and being as the Zen realist who wants to establish the reality of things, he wants to establish the reality of coexistence. So with that aim in view, pṛthaktvaṃ, separateness, accusative, bhūya, more and more, icchasi, second person singular of ish, to seek, to desire, to strive, to obtain, to seek, to pursue. So pṛthaktvaṃ bhūya icchasi, I've translated, you are redoubling effort in pursuit of separateness, with the aim of substantiating coexistence. You are redoubling effort in pursuit of separateness. So this is irony. And if there's one thing I took from Ashvaghosha's two epic poems, it's this pervasive sense of irony. So what he's saying on the face of it and what he's saying below the surface will often be very, very different things. The best example perhaps is the description of all the beautiful sleeping women. The beautiful women fell asleep so the Buddha could escape in the middle of the night. And often in his epic poetry, as I read it, he's those descriptions of all kinds of women are a kind of satire or parody of monks practicing together in a vihara, so in all kinds of weird and wonderful postures. And when he talks to them like dropping off, having dropped off, on the face of it, he's talking about women that have gone into a deep sleep. But below the surface, he's talking about monks who've dropped off body and mind. I've been waffling so long this morning on these two verses that my legs are now killing me, so I'm going to have to... That serves me right for talking too much. The point is, irony. The irony is trying to be right makes us wrong. Trying to establish right posture. If I try to demonstrate the wrong thing, ironically enough, that'll free me up from my usual habit of trying to be right. But if I sit like this, deludedly thinking that it's right posture, if I really believe that I've established the right sitting posture by doing this, that and the other, it will make me wrong. It did make me wrong. Because we'll never understand the truth of emptiness by misguidedly practicing non-emptiness. We might understand the truth, begin to understand the truth of emptiness, if we do the wrong thing with an exploratory mind. If you really look into what the wrong thing is, you see, that was my saving grace, as I mentioned before. For sort of being a contrarian pest who was taught at school to think for myself. In the episode I described a few days ago, I remember sitting in Nishijima Sensei's office, and I just stopped whatever I was doing and thought, I wanted to understand. I wanted to deepen my understanding of where he was coming from. So I just looked at him and asked the question to myself. And the first thing he did was kind of stiffen up, like he was, meeting a macho challenge for a staring match. So I just kept looking. Oh, what's behind that? You know. And then eventually he sort of understood intuitively what was going on, and he just put his hands together and bowed. Partly because of that, I always kind of expected him towards the end of his life that something similar might happen, that he might realise that it was his mistake to have seen me as being on the other side, being his enemy. But actually what happened is he got senile and lost his marbles. So what I hoped would happen never happened. Pṛthag sidhyatīty evaṃ, saha-bhāvaṃ vikāṅkṣasi, saha-bhāva-prasiddhy-arthaṃ, pṛthaktvaṃ bhūya icchasi. Thinking that it is not established separately, you are groping for coexistence. With the aim of substantiating coexistence, you are redoubling effort in pursuit of separateness. So again, it's a very difficult verse to understand. Now, when I translated it 2 years ago, I don't think I'd even begun to understand it. And I'm probably still missing the point on various levels. But what he seems to be saying is that the opponent, with the aim of nailing down what coexistence is, because he understands that a separate world is a dangerous place, where America and China, in the first instance, see themselves as being separate, and then the next step is to dehumanize each other and cast the other as the subhuman enemy. And then you've got really serious situation where it's okay for, you know, as General MacArthur said, the only good Jap I ever saw was a dead Jap. You know, I read that in a book called War Without Mercy that I read 30 or 40 years ago about the Pacific War in Asia. It was very much a race war. The yellow peril, the subhuman Japanese. And then the Japanese were doing the same in China, regarding the Chinese as subhuman. Sort of fodder for samurai officers to test the sharpness of their swords with. So, obviously, separate existence is not the way to go. So the Zen realist wants to substantiate coexistence. We're all in this together. Buddhism is an international religion. So if we're all Buddhist, we can cooperate. We can coexist in harmony. With the aim of substantiating coexistence, you are redoubling effort in pursuit of separateness. You're going more and more in the direction of separateness. That's, again, Buddhism is an international religion. By saying that, Nishijima Sensei's mind was that he wants to establish coexistence. But as I intuited when I heard him say it, no, Sensei, we should say the Buddha's teaching is a universal teaching. That is a more empty conception. To talk about Buddhism being an international religion, it reflects a non-empty view of the world. We, ware Nihonjin. Sensei in his lectures, which I sat through in Japanese a lot, till I got sick of it. Ware. You do, he said, ware means we, ware means I, ware means we. And he didn't say ware Nihonjin, he'd say ware, which means we, but it meant ware Nihonjin. We Japanese are like this. Gaijin are like this. Ware, we Japanese, and then Gaikoku no hito, white people, they got brains like computers. You see, it's a non-empty conception. I knew it was wrong. I didn't understand exactly what was wrong with it. But now I'm seeing more and more clearly, thanks to Nāgārjuna. He's describing, he's criticising the Zen realist opponent. Japanese are like this. Black people are like this. White people are like this. Especially Jewish people are like this. And it's not without truth. You know, stereotypes do reflect often conventional reality, although it's never politically correct to say it. It's true, Jewish people do tend to be good lawyers. Jewish people tend to have a higher IQ. You know, they're hugely overrepresented in things that require a high degree of education and intelligence. But you know, it's dangerous territory to go down there. But Nishijima Sensei didn't care. If it was true, if it was real, he just saw things how he saw them. And I didn't mind that. I didn't mind that at all. I'd much rather have somebody who told the truth as he saw it than a liar who said what was trendy for the sake of popularity. But so I wasn't bothered about him saying that the world is made up of intelligent, intellectual white people, especially including Jews, and very practical yellow people, and physically excellent black people. It didn't bother me that he wasn't politically correct. It bothered me that he felt that he understood the Buddha's teaching, and I sensed he didn't. And me being terribly impatient problem solver, I sort of sensed we weren't getting to solve the problem. And in retrospect, my intuition was right. And here, see, and the tell was what I understood about posture. If you want to substantiate, you can even talk about it in terms of bad Alexander teaching. Is it all interested in the head relative to the back, as if the head and the back are separate entities? You know, you see, just, you know, the head is the weight of a pound of a bag of sugar or something. I don't know how heavy the head is supposed to, but it's a ridiculous conception. How do you know the weight of a human head? It's ridiculous. It's separating the head from everything else. How can you do that? If you separate the head from everything else, you haven't got a living organism. So he said that's another example, even in the Alexander work, just in the aim of establishing the coexistence of the head and the rest of the body, you're redoubling effort in pursuit of separateness by describing the head as like the same weight as a 2-pound bag of sugar. You know, it wobbles, it's free, you know, it does this on top of the spine. Conventionally, it's true, but on the basis of emptiness, it most certainly isn't true. And if you, with the aim of nailing down understanding of the Alexander work, then what you end up is doing what Marjorie Bowler called body work. Instead of learning that this work is an exercise in thinking, which is not located separately anywhere, you start being interested in the weight of the head. So it has to do with, Marjorie talked about the thinking, it's a cut above body work. You can also say it's a kind of a step back, retreating from body work. Anyway, the gist of this verse as I read it has to do with those kind of ironies. If you have non-empty conceptions, they result in limited, end-gaining, partial responses to a problem, and then you get the law of unintended consequences kicks in, and you get all kinds of collateral damage. So, for example, bring it back to posture again. If you are a body worker, you'll try to arrange, even though it's not as gross as pulling the chin and to keep the neck bone straight. Even in Alexander work, you have people who, on a more subtle level, are interested in arranging this and that into a better posture. And that body working will not have a good result in terms of, you won't have a good result in freeing up the breathing, say. So let's say the aim, like the Buddha said, with the whole body inform with thought, I will breathe in, I will breathe out. And then going beyond that, dropping off body and mind, I will breathe in, will breathe out. If we're interested in breathing more freely, body work is not going to help in that direction, because body work is still trying to be right on some level. So what really frees us up, what really frees us up, is giving up the idea of trying to be right. Giving up the idea of being able to do the directions, and then actually daring to think the directions without trying to do them. Let the neck be free, to let the head go forward and up, to let the back lengthen and widen, sending the knees forwards and away. So, on the flip side to this verse is, if you understand what the wrong thing is, the right thing will tend to do itself. That's why this verse also, it's not only to do with sitting on one's high horse and criticising the Zen realist opponent whose understanding of emptiness is not deep enough. It's understanding this in ourselves, really. If we understand how this is the wrong thing, to try to substantiate coexistence, to grope for coexistence, and to try and substantiate it, if we understand what's wrong with that, then we won't go down that path. And not going down that path is where freedom might lie. Pṛthag sidhyatīty evaṃ, saha-bhāvaṃ vikāṅkṣasi, saha-bhāva-prasiddhy-arthaṃ, pṛthaktvaṃ bhūya icchasi. Thinking that it is not established separately, you are groping for coexistence. With the aim of substantiating coexistence, you are redoubling effort in pursuit of separateness.
pṛthag na sidhyatīty evaṃ saha-bhāvaṃ vikāṅkṣasi saha-bhāva-prasiddhy-arthaṃ pṛthaktvaṃ bhūya icchasi.